Namaste. I, Anuradha, would like to thank all of you for watching our videos and listening to our audios on Spotify and writing in your comments and suggestions. If you haven't registered with our Spotify channel, please do, so that you can listen to all the videos in an audio form wherever, whenever you want to do so. Today we have with us Vishal Sharma, who's a Vastu expert, and he's learned astrology from his mother, who was an astrologer of repute. So, Vishalji, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Anuradha. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Vishalji, what is this topic that we're going to talk about today?
Okay, so today we are going to talk about what is the best location for the kitchen, and by not having at the right place, how does it impact when it comes to diabetes? That's a common issue nowadays, which is spreading specifically in the subcontinent area. So I thought it's a good idea to discuss how to manage your diabetes by keeping the kitchen in the right place. So let's discuss that.
Okay, so that's a good place to begin with Vastu discussion on kitchen and diabetes, right?
Correct. Okay, so as you know, the diabetes is such a slow moving ailment, which people don't even realize that they have, and by the time they realize it, sometimes it becomes too late, right? So I thought it's a good idea to discuss that. So to start with the process, how diabetes works and how diabetes starts in your body, it is important to understand how do we consume food, right? So the way the science or the way our digestion describes how the food is consumed is that we intake food, which gives the energy, but that food is actually broken down into sugar or / glucose, and that sugar goes into our blood. Now, when the sugar is excess in our blood, that actually results into what we call as diabetes, right? Now the question is, how do we control that excess sugar? So there is a gland which is called as pancreas, which is responsible for generating insulin, and insulin is responsible for consuming, or what we say, oxidizing that excess of sugar in the blood. Now that excess of sugar is managed by insulin. So if your insulin is not generated in enough quantity by pancreas, then you will have excess of sugar, which will eventually impact your rest of the body parts. Now the question is, why does the pancreas doesn't create the necessary insulin, right? So there are two types of diabetes in that context. One is type 2, one is type 1. Type 2 is where insulin is there is not enough quantity of insulin. Not enough quantity of insulin generated by pancreas. Hence there is excess of sugar, which means you're having a type 2. Type 1, there is no insulin generated or created by pancreas, so people have to start taking insulin injections straight away. Whereas in type 2, you can still manage through walk or through exercises or through your diet, right? So these are the two types of diabetes. Now, when we bring it into Vastu and astrology word, we first look at it. Okay, what are the key organs which are responsible for this ailment, and who represents what, right? So for example, pancreas, which is a gland, is represented by Venus, and we know in Vastu that Venus is the southeast, which is where the fire element. Venus is also represented by Lakshmi, which we have discussed in the past. It is also responsible. Venus is responsible for our cash flow, right? Here it is pancreas. Whereas liver is represented by Jupiter, which is also an important part of the management of diabetes, and Jupiter resides in the northeast. And the other two part, which is the blood is represented by Mars, which is of red color, and the movement of the blood, which is Moon, which is the watery element. So these are the four key which we require. And sun is also plays an important role, because sun is important for your vitality and for your immunity, right? So for example, in today's time, if your sun is weak, then your immunity is very weak. So you should work on your immunity, at least during these times of pandemic, right? Now the next question is, okay, we know how the food works. What are the organs? Next question is, how do we cook our food? What is the 3 or 4 ingredients which we need? So for cooking food, you need fire. You have to cook the food. So fire comes from southeast. In order for fire to work, or fire to work properly, you need supply of air or oxygen, which is the fuel for fire. So air means east, which is sun. And then you also need water, right? You also need water to cook food. Water comes from the north, which is where Mercury, and on the cardinal side there is northeast. Now, the Jupiter is described in our scriptures, specifically in Vastu and in astrology, is because we want to provide the Satgun, which is the mode of goodness. Because the food we eat, ideally in the before the whole modern science came in and we started eating food which is made of Rajasic or Tamasic, which is onion and garlic. Traditionally in Hinduism or in our Sanatan Dharma, the food used to be sattvic because we used to offer that food to the god, and that used to be sattvic food. So the idea was always to have a sattvic food, but for some reason we are still using, or we are still consuming a more Rajasic and Tamasic food. But traditionally, the scriptures say you should always be having a sattvic food. Now that sat gun in the food comes from the Jupiter. So the flow of energy which is being described in our in the text of Vastu is that the flow of energy flows from water, which is north, then to northeast, which is Jupiter, which is where the Satgun comes in. Then it goes to east, which is where sun, which is the air element. Then from sun, it goes to southeast, which is Venus, which is where the food is cooked. And then once you consume the food, it goes to Mars, which is for your action, which is for your karma. So the flow of energy has to be Jupiter, Sun, Venus will help you in your that food will be helping you to overcome of any ailment, or that food will support your growth. The moment your flow of energy, specifically Venus or any other element which is moved, then the food which is being created or being made or cooked is not going to help you, and it will have negative effects. So for that purpose, if I take an example that Venus is basically southeast, Venus is where food is cooked, Venus is kitchen. If it is in southeast, then it is fine, the flow is fine. But the moment you shift that flow to some other parts, then you have repercussions. So for example, if you move Venus to southwest, which means you move your kitchen to southwest, then you are going into the zone of Rahu, where that is a demon's energy, right? So now if you look at the flow, how does the flow has changed? The flow is Jupiter, Sun, there is no Venus anymore. So you move to Mars, Mars to Rahu, and then Rahu to Venus. So Venus and Rahu is causing affliction or causing distress to Venus. And then after Venus, it is Saturn. Now Saturn is cold, Venus is fire, and then Rahu is dry. So Venus is not comfortable in between. So since the Venus is not comfortable in between, the food or the kitchen which is being used to create food is not going to help you. If it is not going to help you, that means your pancreas is going to be impacted. And if your pancreas are going to be impacted, that means the insulin, its core function is to produce insulin, which might not work. So if the insulin is not being produced properly or in enough quantity by pancreas, then you have a problem of diabetes. So that's one example. Similarly, if we go to the next slide, please. I've taken another example because there is a perception or there is a thought process, or some people have actually said that moving the kitchen in the west is a good place because they have found that the palaces in the in earlier centuries used to have kitchen in the west. But the concept, or the concept which is being described for palaces, that the palaces used to have a higher ceiling. Their roofs had a higher ceiling. They used to have a higher ceiling in the olden days, and that means higher ceiling means you have a lot of Akash Tattva, or the metal element or space. Right. Now, if you have a higher space, which is required for expansion. In fact, I always have found that when you go to US or even Canada, you will find the buildings, they have a higher ceiling. Somehow their buildings, government buildings, are always having a higher ceilings. So that's why they are always, on the, if you look at their economy or if you look at their stature in the world, they're always at the higher side of things. Whereas here, with our buildings or with our government buildings, their ceiling has gone down. The moment you reduce your ceiling from 12 feet to 9 feet, 8 feet, you are reducing your space element. So you're reducing your own expansion.
Growth, right.
Because space is required expansion. As such, Jupiter is responsible for space in astrology. But here, the space is the metal, is the expansion planet. Also, moon is there, which is about your thought process. So if you reduce your space, you're also reducing your thought process. You're also reducing the ability to do something. Right. Ability to think that I want to do this, I want to do that.
And then if your ability to think is reduced, then obviously you are not able to produce anything good.
Correct. So then the action will not come. If the thought process is not there, then how does the action will come? Right? Yeah. So in the context of the palaces, it actually makes sense because palace had a higher or a excessive space element. So in the context of 5 elements, fire is actually responsible for controlling this space, because the concept is that the next element is your child. You create the next element, but the element after the next, which is the first, second, third element, is the one which you control. So in case of water, water controls fire, because water creates air and then air creates fire, but water controls fire, right? Similarly, air controls fire, but air creates fire, but air controls earth. Then what fire creates earth, because when fire finishes or fire dies down, it becomes an ash and then becomes part of an earth. But fire actually controls metal. So if you had a palace which had a higher ceiling and higher akash tattva or space, if you bring the fire there, which is Venus, which is kitchen, then it is okay to control that. But in today's context, we don't make ceilings or roofs which is more than 12 feet. We are actually making roofs which are only 8 feet, 7 feet, 9 feet, because we have this tendency to have a roof ceiling nowadays. Everybody wants to have a roof ceiling. So whatever roof even is being given by a builder, people are reducing that, which is not helping their own cause in terms of growth, right? So in today's context, unless you have a higher ceiling, more than 12 feet, and you have an excess of space, maybe you can take the kitchen in the west and it might help you. So some Vastu, some people in Vastu, in the profession of Vastu, prescribe taking the kitchen into the west. In my view, if you want to do that, at least have a higher ceiling. But if you look from a astrological and pure Vastu point of view, and from the energy flow, then see what happens. You are taking Venus where Saturn is, because west is where Saturn is, and west is also where the Devta of Varun. Varuna is nothing but a controller of oceans. He is the Devta for oceans. So what is your energy flow now? If you take kitchen to the west, so you said Jupiter in northeast, Sun in the east, southeast no Venus because kitchen is gone. You go to Mars, then to Rahu in southwest, then to Saturn in the west, and then you put the kitchen, which is Venus. So Saturn, Rahu, Saturn, Venus, and then Moon. So now the Venus is between Moon and Saturn, which is nothing but a pure cold zone, because Saturn is so far.
Yeah.
It is a totally cold. There is absolutely cold over there. So you are taking a fire which is so cold over there that the food which might be cooked there might not be good enough for you to consume. I mean, this in theoretical sense, right? So the idea, so the idea here is that you are taking Venus and putting with the Saturn and in the area of Moon, which is not helping the fire element to prosper as such, which means you will have repercussions.
Right. Can I just ask you, sorry for interrupting, Vishalji, just asking you a question here. So what I make out of it from Vastu here is that this person will have a very low insulin production, because the fire is fighting a losing battle between a cold zone and a watery zone.
Correct. And guess what? Who is the person who works in the kitchen? Who is the person who works mostly in the kitchen? It is the lady of the house. And who is the lady of the house? Lady of the house is regarded as the Lakshmi. So if you are taking Lakshmi to that, what is the Lakshmi is going to do? Lakshmi is going to suffer not only from diabetic problems or some ailment, but she will also suffer from depression, because you have taken Venus into the zone, which is a totally cold place. You are sitting in a zone where Moon and Saturn are there, which makes a poisonous or wish yoga, right? And you are taking the lady to there. So what she will do, she will also not only suffer from any health ailment, she will also suffer from depression. So that should be avoided. That's why it should be avoided. So in my view, I normally prescribe people to only to have a kitchen in the southeast. That is purely from an astrological, from a Vastu point of view. Now, if we bring a more popular nowadays is Astro Vastu. So if we bring that Astro Vastu lens, so in astrology we know that the second house is the house of food, house of nourishment, house of taste, right? That's where our tongue is. So if we look at what is our second house, so if you want to suggest somebody a Vastu, the first thing is you look at their chart and look at what is the second lord, and look at the position, look at the number of the individual Ashtag Varga of that particular planet. So if your second lord is say Moon, and then you see how many Ashtag Varga is being given to Moon in respective zones, which is for fire, earth, air, and water. So if fire has say 14 or 15, then you say my Moon has got maximum blessings or maximum dots in east, which is fire, which is east. So then I will make my kitchen in the east. If if my moon has got maximum number of Ashtavakra in the water, which is the individual, not the full Ashtavakra, it is for the individual planet. If it is gets maximum number of points in west, in water, then it becomes my north, right? But sometimes you will have two Ashtavakras, which is having the same number of points. So if you have between north and west as same, then your kitchen goes between north and west, which is northwest. So you take the middle point of that when you have same of them. So that is the other way, which is to apply the Astro Vastu lens, right? Which will help and benefit that particular individual. And one more thing, this is actually being mentioned by Sanjay Rathji, that when you do the Vastu, the traditional belief is that whoever is the owner, you should do the Vastu according to their Patri. But according to him, he says that if you're a couple or a married couple, then always do the Vastu on the chart of your wife, because if your Vastu aligns with your wife's chart, if she's happy, then house is happy, everybody's happy. That is his view, right? So which makes sense.
Right. Thank you.
Now, and finally, we just want to wrap it up with the pure traditional Chinese medicine view, which is similar to our Vastu, or which is same as Vastu or Feng Shui. Here, I want to prescribe how we see through just the elements. So, as you can see, I've discussed that water controls fire, but water creates air. Air creates fire, but water controls fire. Now, when it comes to diabetes, we say it is about eating habits and how we should eat. So there is a lot of emphasis in how do we eat food, or how do we manage our fooding habits when it comes to diabetes. So in the TCM, or the traditional Chinese medicine, stomach and spleen are the earth element, and spleen is the one which actually works with pancreas. So if spleen is working properly, then the pancreas work properly. But if spleen is not working properly, then your pancreas will not work. So there they see pancreas in the earth element. Now, what is earth element? Earth element is stomach. And in our organ clock, if we look at the organ clock, the 7 to 11 a.m., which is stomach and spleen, is where when the earth element is most active. That is the best time for the earth element to be active, or these organs are active. That means if you have a good diet in the morning, or you have a heavy diet or heavy food intake, then your stomach will work, spleen will work, and spleen work. If the spleen is working properly, then your pancreas will work. Meaning that if you take a good intake of food in the morning, that is good for you, rather than taking a heavy diet in the afternoon or in the evening. By doing a good intake in the morning, you are not only ensuring your earth element is controlled or is managed, but because earth controls or manages the water element, which is your kidneys, because water represents kidney and urinary bladder, you are controlling your kidneys. The moment your earth element is disturbed, your stomach, your constipation, your spleen is not working, there is a straightaway impact on water, which is your kidney. So that you will see that a lot of people who suffer from diabetes, one of the organs which gets impacted easily is kidneys.
Right.
And that is correlation. We can see how it is being correlated here.
Right.
So that is one looking at it.
Just one question, last quick question before we end up. This is, as you said about the Astro Vastu. So does Astro Vastu, superride or can be imposed over Vastu easily?
The thing which is important to understand is, if your birth time is accurate and you have casted your horoscope, that is, your destiny is pretty much fixed, right? Yes, you have a free will. Your birth chart actually describes what your Vastu should be. If your birth chart suggests you there is a Vastu dosha, then you will have a Vastu dosha. If your birth chart says your house door will be in that direction, it will be there. So, for example, your ascendant should tell you where should be the door, or in which direction the door is. And similarly, if the fourth house lord also describes, for example, the direction of the entrance. But what I'm trying to say is that your birth chart controls everything, and Vastu gives you the element management of that. But when we apply Astro Vastu, it pretty much overrides, or you're taking the intakes of the astrology to overcome your Vastu doshas, right? So astrology pretty much overrides whatever you are trying to do in Vastu. Or the other way to look at it is that you cannot do Vastu without astrology.
Thank you so much.
Very hard. It's very hard to do that.
So we're good to have you on board, Vishalji, who has a good knowledge on astrology, and is an expert in Vastu. Thank you so much, Vishalji, for a beautiful session on diabetes and Vastu with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuradha. Thank you for inviting me.
Please hit the bell icon for fresh updates. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on the videos, and please subscribe to our channel.